Abigail stood at the edge of what had once been her home, her heart heavy with sorrow. The sod house, a modest structure built by her late husband with love and dedication, now felt like a prison from which she had just escaped. The wind swept across the open prairie, chilling her to the bone as she clutched her two boys tightly against her side. Samuel, her eldest at 7, looked up at her with wide, fearful eyes, while little Thomas, barely 5, buried his face in her skirts, sensing the weight of their situation. Abigail's mind raced as she recalled the events leading up to this moment. Her in-laws had never accepted her fully. They saw her as an outsider, an interloper who had taken their son away from them. After his passing, their disdain grew into outright cruelty. They blamed Abigail for everything, for the hard times that followed their son's death and for the struggles of raising two boys alone. When they finally cast her out, it was as if they had severed the last thread of belonging she had left. With every step away from the sod house, Abigail felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief that she was free from their scorn, but dread about what lay ahead. How would she care for her boys? Where would they find shelter and food? The prairie stretched endlessly before them, vast and unforgiving, yet she would not let despair take root in her heart. She had to be strong for Samuel and Thomas. "Mommy, where will we go?" Samuel asked softly, breaking the silence that hung heavy in the air. His small voice trembled with uncertainty. Abigail knelt beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "We'll find somewhere safe, my love. We'll find a place where we can be together and happy." She spoke with a confidence she didn't entirely feel but hoped would reassure him. As they walked along the dirt path, Abigail's mind began to wander to memories of happier times, the laughter they shared over simple meals and the stories her husband used to tell by the fire. Those moments felt like distant dreams now, lost in the shadow of grief and hardship. But deep down, Abigail knew she must hold onto those memories. They were all she had left of him. After hours of trudging through the dusty trail, fatigue set in. The boys were tired and hungry, their spirits dimming with each passing moment. Just when Abigail felt the weight of hopelessness creeping back in, a figure appeared on the horizon, a man on horseback riding toward them. As he drew closer, Abigail noticed his weathered face and kind eyes that seemed to radiate warmth despite the chilly air. "Howdy there," he called out cheerfully as he approached. "I'm Sam Finch, just passing through." His voice was deep but gentle, and it gave Abigail a glimmer of hope. "Hello," she replied hesitantly. "I'm Abigail. These are my sons." She gestured toward Samuel and Thomas, who peered shyly from behind their mother's skirts. "What brings you out here all alone?" Sam asked, concern flickering across his features. Abigail briefly shared their story, the loss of her husband and the cruelty they'd faced from her in-laws. Sam listened intently, nodding as she spoke. When she finished, he looked down at the boys and then back at Abigail. "I've got a line shack not far from here," he offered kindly. "It ain't much, drafty and a bit rough, but it'll keep you warm for now." Tears pricked at Abigail's eyes as gratitude washed over her. They had found someone willing to help them in their darkest hour. She looked into Sam's earnest brown eyes and realized that perhaps this could be a new beginning for them all. A chance to create a family out of kindness and shared hardships on these wide-open plains. The wind howled across the open prairie as Abigail recalled the moments leading to her heart-wrenching departure. It was easy to forget the warmth of family gatherings that had once filled their sod house with laughter and joy. Now, those memories felt like shadows overshadowed by the dark history of her in-laws' disdain. Abigail had always sensed their judgment even during her marriage. Her husband, Thomas, had loved her fiercely, a bond that seemed to infuriate his mother more than anything else. She often made snide remarks about Abigail's cooking or the way she dressed, claiming she wasn't fit to be part of their family. But after Thomas passed away, their contempt turned cold and sharp, like ice cutting through warm flesh. Days turned into weeks after his death, and Abigail found herself drowning in grief while trying to care for Samuel and little Thomas. The boys were confused and sad, often asking why their father was gone. Abigail struggled to provide them with comfort when her own heart was breaking. As she grieved alone in a house that felt increasingly hostile, her in-laws seized every opportunity to point out her shortcomings. Their words were daggers that cut deeper each time they visited. "Look at you," her mother-in-law sneered one afternoon as Abigail attempted to prepare a simple meal. "You can't even keep the house clean or feed your children properly. What kind of mother are you?" The accusation stung like poison. Abigail wanted to defend herself but felt too small against the weight of their scrutiny. There were moments when hope flickered within her. She thought if she could just show them that she was capable, maybe they would accept her and the boys again. She baked bread from scratch, tried new recipes, and even attempted to tidy up the house more often. But no matter how hard she worked or how lovingly she cared for Samuel and Thomas, it never seemed enough for her in-laws. The final straw came one bleak winter day when food supplies ran low. Abigail went into the kitchen, determined to make a meal from what little they had left. As she fumbled through the pantry for oats and flour, she heard voices rising outside, the unmistakable sound of a confrontation brewing. I won't have that woman in my house any longer. Her mother-in-law's voice boomed like thunder. She's a disgrace to our family. Abigail's heart sank as she realized the confrontation was aimed at her. Samuel and Thomas peeked around the corner, confused and frightened by the commotion. Please, Abigail whispered to them, trying to keep her voice steady. Stay close. Moments later, her father-in-law stormed into the kitchen with fury written across his face. You've brought shame upon this family, he shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Abigail. Your weakness is dragging us down. We won't tolerate it anymore. Before she could respond or defend herself, he ordered her out, his words echoing in her ears like a death sentence. Take your boys and leave. You're no longer welcome here. Abigail stood frozen for a moment as shock washed over her. She glanced down at Samuel and Thomas, their small faces pale with fear and confusion. In that instant, everything changed, the safety of their home shattered into pieces like glass hitting the ground. Go on, he barked again. With tears streaming down her cheeks but determination rising within her heart, Abigail gathered her sons close and stepped out into the biting cold winds of winter. A world full of uncertainty awaited them. The moment marked a turning point in their lives. Cast away from cruelty, they now faced a path fraught with challenges but also possibilities for healing and hope. As Abigail and her boys trudged along the dirt path, the biting wind whipped around them, but they pressed on, driven by the need to find shelter. Just when they thought hope was slipping away, they spotted a solitary structure in the distance, a line shack perched against the vast prairie. The sight of it stirred something deep within Abigail. It looked worn yet welcoming, a potential refuge from their harsh reality. Inside the shack lived Sam Finch, a broke cowboy who had made his home among the rolling plains. His days were filled with the hard labor of a drover, guiding cattle across endless stretches of land. Sam was no stranger to hardship himself. He had lost his own family to illness years ago and had never fully recovered from the loneliness that settled in his heart like a heavy fog. The empty space at his table reminded him every day of the love he once knew, and though he kept to himself out of habit, he longed for companionship and connection. Sam was a man of few words, rough around the edges, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands that spoke of years spent under the vast sky. His clothes were worn and patched, a testament to both his frugality and his acceptance of his situation. Yet beneath his tough exterior lay a gentle spirit willing to lend a hand to anyone in need. He had seen enough suffering in his life to know how quickly things could change for the worse. On that cold day, as Abigail approached with her boys in tow, Sam was sitting on an old stool outside the shack, mending a saddle. The sight of them tugged at his heartstrings. He could see the weariness etched on Abigail's face and the uncertainty in her boys' eyes. He stood up and wiped his hands on his trousers before stepping toward them. Hey there, he called out in a warm tone that contrasted with the chill in the air. You look like you could use some help. Abigail hesitated for just a moment, unsure whether to trust this stranger. But there was kindness in his brown eyes and an openness in his posture that eased her fears. She took a step closer and introduced herself, her voice trembling slightly. I'm Abigail, and these are my sons, Samuel and Thomas. Nice to meet you, Sam replied with a nod. What brings you out here all alone? Abigail took a deep breath, knowing she needed to be honest but feeling vulnerable, exposing her pain. We've been cast out from my in-laws' home after my husband passed away. I don't know where to go. A flicker of understanding crossed Sam's face as he listened intently to her story. He recognized their plight all too well, the feeling of being lost and abandoned in a world where kindness seemed rare. Well, I can't offer much, he said slowly. But I have a line shack that's not much to look at but should keep you warm for now. His invitation was genuine. Despite his own struggles, Sam felt compelled to help this small family in need. Tears welled in Abigail's eyes as gratitude washed over her. She hadn't expected such kindness from a stranger. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Sam gestured for them to follow him inside. The shack was indeed drafty and sparsely furnished, but it held a certain charm, a place where friendships could bloom amid hardship. As they stepped inside together, Abigail couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps this was where they would begin to heal. With Sam's willingness to lend a hand and their shared experiences of loss, there was hope for forming an unbreakable bond amidst the challenges ahead. As Abigail, Samuel, and little Thomas approached the line shack, a mixture of trepidation and hope swirled within her. The building looked humble, its wooden walls weathered by time and the elements, yet it emanated a warmth that contrasted sharply with the chilling wind howling around them. Each step felt heavy as they neared the door, but Abigail knew this was their chance, a flicker of light in a dark time. Sam Finch stood at the entrance, hands resting on his hips, taking in the sight of the weary family before him. He could see their hesitation in the way they lingered at the threshold. The boys clung to their mother's skirts, their faces pale with uncertainty. Abigail felt exposed, vulnerable in front of this kind stranger, but she also felt an unexplainable pull toward this place that promised shelter against the harsh reality outside. Come on in, Sam called out, his voice breaking through the biting wind like a soothing balm. It's warmer inside. Abigail met his gaze and took a deep breath to steady her nerves. "Thank you," she replied softly as she stepped forward, holding tightly to both boys' hands. She pushed past the creaky door and into Sam's sanctuary. The interior of the shack was modest yet inviting. A single room encompassed everything: a small kitchen nook with a ragged table and 2 chairs, a worn-out couch that faced a well-used potbelly stove, and a bed tucked into one corner beneath a window that let in slants of fading light. It wasn't much by any means, but to Abigail it felt like an oasis amidst their desolation. As she entered, Sam moved aside to let them pass. "I'm afraid I don't have much to offer," he said, glancing at the sparse furnishings with an apologetic smile. "But you're welcome to use what you need." Little Thomas immediately spotted an old blanket draped over the back of the couch and ran for it. "Mom, look," he exclaimed with innocent delight. Holding it up high made him momentarily forget their troubles, as if he had found treasure among scraps. "Is it warm?" Samuel asked cautiously as he watched his little brother wrap himself up in the blanket. "It'll keep you cozy," Sam assured him. "But I'll get some firewood started so we can heat things up properly." He moved with purpose towards a pile of logs stacked near the stove and began adding pieces to create a warm glow. Abigail observed Sam as he worked, his movements confident yet gentle, and felt an appreciation for his efforts to make them comfortable despite his own limited means. She could sense his loneliness hidden beneath layers of kindness. Perhaps they were not so different after all. "Thank you for letting us stay," Abigail said sincerely as she watched him stoke the fire with practiced ease. "We've been through so much already." "It's no trouble at all," Sam replied without looking up, focusing on nurturing flames that were now beginning to crackle cheerfully before them. The heat spread through the room quickly, wrapping them all in an inviting embrace. While warmth filled the air around them, Abigail knelt down beside Thomas and Samuel and draped her arms around them both. Their small huddle felt safe yet fragile. She couldn't help but think about how far they'd come just to find this refuge amid their uncertainty. "Why don't you boys sit by the fire?" Sam suggested after he saw them shivering slightly less than before. "I've got some food stashed around here somewhere." With that promise hanging in the air like sweet music, Abigail's heart swelled just a bit more. Maybe this place could truly be home for them again. As night fell outside and darkness enveloped the prairie beyond those walls, a new sense of comfort began to blossom within Sam's line shack. A space where Abigail and her boys could begin healing from their past, while embracing an uncertain future together under one shared roof. As days turned into weeks, Abigail and her boys began to settle into their new life in Sam Finch's line shack. The initial warmth of welcome had blossomed into a strange but comforting routine. Each morning, Abigail woke before the sun peeked over the horizon, its light spilling slowly into the small space of the shack. The potbelly stove crackled softly as she prepared breakfast, filling the air with the inviting scent of porridge simmering in a pot. Samuel and Thomas would wake to the sound of their mother moving about, their eyes still heavy with sleep. Samuel had taken it upon himself to help with chores, trying to ease the burden on his mother. He often filled a bucket with water from the nearby well, a task that once felt daunting now seemed like an adventure each time he ventured out. Little Thomas would tag along behind him, his laughter echoing against the prairie wind as they splashed playfully in puddles formed by recent rains. Despite these joyful moments, adjusting to life in the line shack was not without its challenges. The space was cramped, and there were times when they felt each other's presence too keenly, like when Samuel accidentally knocked over a stack of firewood or when Thomas spilled his drink on the table. Frustration sometimes bubbled beneath the surface, especially when Abigail found herself longing for more privacy or quiet. "Mommy, can we have a proper house again?" Thomas asked one evening as they sat around the table for dinner. His innocent question pierced Abigail's heart. She could see that he missed stability and familiarity. "Someday, sweetheart," she replied gently, reaching across to squeeze his hand. "But this is home for now." She wanted her boys to understand that home wasn't just about walls and roofs. It was about love and togetherness. Sam often watched them from afar during these moments, noticing how Abigail navigated motherhood amidst uncertainty. He admired her resilience, a quality he knew all too well from his own life struggles. Sam found ways to help without intruding. He'd check on their firewood supply or bring over fresh vegetables from his small garden plot each week. These gestures brought smiles to Abigail's face and made her feel less alone in this new beginning. One chilly afternoon, Sam invited them outside to join him while he tended to some repairs around the shack. At first hesitant, Abigail followed with her boys in tow as curiosity took hold. They worked together under Sam's guidance, holding nails while he hammered and passing tools back and forth. For Samuel and Thomas, it was thrilling, like playing at being cowboys themselves. "See? It's not so hard when you work together," Sam said after successfully patching up a loose board on the roof. His pride shone through as he looked at them with satisfaction. Abigail smiled at them all, feeling a sense of community blossom among them like wildflowers on the prairie after rain, unexpected yet beautiful amidst adversity. She realized that even though they were far from their previous lives, they were creating something unique here. As evenings settled in around them, they gathered by the warm glow of the potbelly stove, often sharing stories about their pasts under its flickering light. Sam spoke fondly of long rides across open fields while Samuel chimed in with tales of heroic adventures inspired by his favorite books. Even little Thomas contributed silly jokes that erupted laughter from everyone present. In those little moments, whether fixing fences or laughing at bedtime stories, they were stitching together new memories that filled their hearts with warmth despite life's uncertainties outside those walls. And through it all, the challenges faced and joys shared, they began recognizing this line shack not just as shelter but as a home where healing could take root amid hardship. As the days turned to weeks in Sam Finch's line shack, a beautiful transformation took place. What began as mere cohabitation shifted into something deeper and more meaningful. Abigail, Sam, Samuel, and little Thomas started to forge a unique family unit, bound not by blood but by shared experiences, laughter, and an abundance of warmth. Every evening they gathered around the small table for dinner, which had become a cherished ritual. On most nights, Abigail cooked hearty meals of stews or fresh vegetables from Sam's garden. The pot simmered on the stovetop while delicious scents filled the air, creating a cozy atmosphere that invited stories and conversation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the atmosphere sparkled with anticipation and comfort. "Did you know that Missy Goodman down by the creek thinks she is the best at catching fish?" Samuel proclaimed one evening, grinning as he recalled an adventure from earlier that day. "Oh really?" Sam responded with interest, raising an eyebrow. "I'd like to see her try and outfish me. I can catch a whopper any day." Thomas giggled uncontrollably at the idea. "I want to help you. Can I be your fishing assistant?" he shouted with enthusiasm. "You just might be the secret weapon we need," Sam replied with a chuckle, playfully ruffling Thomas's hair. The laughter melded with the sounds of clinking cutlery as they enjoyed their meal together, each bite amplifying their growing bond. Abigail often sat back and watched these interactions unfold with joy in her heart. Despite the burdens she carried from her past, evenings like this brought flickers of happiness back into her life. She realized they were creating something beautiful together, an environment where love permeated their daily lives and where healing became possible. One particularly chilly night, they decided to host a small celebration in honor of finding one of Sam's old guitar strings among his belongings. After dinner was finished and dishes cleared away, Sam picked up his battered guitar and plucked heartwarming tunes under the soft glow of the oil lamp. "Come on now," Sam encouraged as he began playing a lively tune that made the boys hop up from their chairs. "Dance with your mother." Giggling brightly, Samuel took Abigail's hand while Thomas clasped his brother's other hand. They moved around rhythmically in their tiny space, twirling and leaping as laughter echoed off the wooden walls. Abigail's heart swelled with joy. Moments like these allowed her to forget their worries and experience pure happiness, something she thought might never happen again. As weeks passed, Abigail noticed how household chores became a group effort rather than individual responsibilities. They'd all pitch in to sweep dirt floors or tidy up after meals. The boys would take turns filling water buckets or mending small repairs alongside Sam under his guidance. Whenever one person completed a task successfully, cheers erupted from the rest. "Great job on that fence," Sam would announce when they got it right together. The pride in their work became almost tangible, a sharp contrast to feelings of inadequacy that once plagued Abigail in her former life. Evenings turned into storytelling sessions by the flickering firelight as they shared tales from their lives. Abigail recounted warm memories of her husband and the boy's father while ensuring that Thomas would always remember him through sweet stories that captured his gentle spirit. Each tale was filled with love and laughter. Sometimes they even found room for tears, a testament to how far they had come in healing together as a family. Slowly but surely, they built new traditions while honoring old memories, a tapestry woven together by dedication, kindness, and love. It was during quiet moments watching stars blanket the night sky that Abigail embraced the reality. This line shack was no longer just a shelter. It had become home, their home, filled with shared dreams and companionship amidst life's uncertainties. In the heart of the prairie, where the winds whispered secrets and the stars twinkled like promises, Abigail, Sam, and the boys continued to grow closer as a family. Their bond deepened through countless small acts of kindness, which became the foundation of their new life together. Each gesture, no matter how simple, served as a reminder that love could flourish even in the toughest of times. One chilly morning, Samuel woke early to help Abigail prepare breakfast. He watched intently as she stirred a pot of oatmeal on the stove, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Can I help, Mom?" he asked eagerly. Abigail smiled warmly at her son. "Of course. You can set the table." Samuel jumped at the chance and hurried to grab the mismatched plates and cutlery. As he placed each item on the table with care, he felt a sense of pride wash over him. It was a small act, but it made him feel important. Meanwhile, Sam entered the shack with a bundle of firewood tucked under one arm and a sack of fresh vegetables from his garden slung over his shoulder. "Morning," he greeted cheerfully as he set down his load. He noticed the boys helping Abigail and felt warmth spread through him. "I brought some fresh carrots and potatoes. Thought you might enjoy a hearty stew tonight." "Thank you, Sam," Abigail replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. She knew how much effort it took for Sam to gather those vegetables. It wasn't just food. It was an offering of kindness that reinforced their connection. Later that day, as they all worked together to mend a broken fence outside, Thomas stumbled over a loose board and fell to the ground with a soft thud. Instantly worried, Samuel rushed to his little brother's side. "Are you okay, Tommy?" he asked, kneeling down beside him. Thomas whimpered but quickly shook his head to clear the tears from his eyes. "I'm fine," he declared bravely, trying to stand up again. Sam knelt down next to them and offered Thomas a hand. "Here, let me help you," he said gently. With Sam's steady grip and Samuel's encouragement, Thomas was back on his feet in no time. Sam ruffled his hair playfully before getting back to work, leaving Thomas smiling wide. That evening, as they sat around the table sharing another delicious meal prepared by Abigail, they found themselves laughing about their day's adventures. Each story told was sprinkled with laughter and camaraderie that filled the air with warmth. "Mom, remember when I caught that huge fish?" Samuel exclaimed animatedly, recounting their fishing trip with Sam. Abigail chuckled at the memory, and then Thomas threw his bait right back into the water. "Hey, I thought it was supposed to go in there," Thomas protested playfully, making everyone burst into laughter once more. After dinner, Abigail felt inspired by their shared joy and decided to start a new tradition. "How about we all write down our favorite memory from this week?" she suggested. They would read them aloud together each week during dinner. The boys' eyes lit up with excitement at this idea. They quickly gathered paper and pencils as Abigail prepared a space for them to write. It was another small act, a way to document their happiness and reflect on their experiences together. Days turned into weeks filled with similar moments that stitched their lives closer together like a patchwork quilt made from memories woven with love and laughter. They supported one another through small gestures, a shoulder to lean on during tough days, or words of encouragement when doubts crept in. One evening after reading their memories aloud, Abigail looked around at her makeshift family gathered under the flickering light of the oil lamp. She realized that these acts of kindness had created something extraordinary. They had built not just a home but a sanctuary where they could find comfort amid life's uncertainties. Through shared meals, laughter-filled evenings, and simple gestures of support for one another, Abigail, Sam, and the boys discovered that kindness could thrive even in difficult times, transforming their lined shack into a haven rich with love and belonging. As winter settled over the prairie, the challenges for Abigail, Sam, and the boys intensified. The winds howled like wild animals outside their lined shack, and snow blanketed the land, creating a stark contrast to the warmth they had built within. While they had formed a loving family unit, the cold brought new trials that tested their resilience and determination. One particularly frigid day, Abigail noticed that their supply of firewood was running dangerously low. The crackling potbelly stove that had kept them warm was now struggling to fight against the biting chill that seeped through the walls. She glanced out the window at the thick layer of snow covering the ground and felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. "Sam," she called out as he came in from outside, cheeks flushed from the cold. "We're almost out of firewood. We need to gather more before it gets too late." Sam sighed deeply, knowing they had little choice but to face the frozen landscape together. "I'll grab my axe," he said resolutely. "Let's get what we can before sunset." Samuel perked up at the mention of gathering wood. "Can I help?" he asked eagerly, feeling a sense of purpose swell within him. "Absolutely," Sam replied with a smile. "You can help me carry it back." Thomas, ever eager to join in on an adventure, bounced on his feet. "Me too. I want to help." With a plan in place, they bundled up in layers of clothing, hats pulled down tight and scarves wrapped around their necks, and stepped out into the wintry world. The cold air bit at their exposed skin, but excitement filled their hearts as they trudged through the snow together. The task was challenging. Each swing of Sam's axe sent splinters flying, while Samuel and Thomas gathered fallen branches and placed them into a makeshift sled tied behind them. They worked efficiently as a team, laughing and encouraging one another as they forged ahead. "Look at this one," Samuel exclaimed as he uncovered a sturdy log partially buried beneath the snow. With combined effort, they managed to lift it onto their sled. "Good catch," Sam praised, giving Samuel an enthusiastic pat on the back. As they continued working together, Abigail felt her worries begin to ease. Through teamwork and determination, they were overcoming obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. The laughter shared among them transformed even the hardest tasks into moments of joy. When they finally returned to the shack with their haul of firewood, Abigail greeted them with warm cups of cocoa waiting on the table, a small reward for their hard work. As they sat around sipping their drinks by the warmth of the stove, relief washed over them. They had faced winter's harshness together and emerged stronger for it. Yet challenges didn't stop there. Financial worries also loomed like dark clouds over their heads. Sam's work as a drover had slowed in winter months, limiting his income, while Abigail did her best to stretch every penny during trips to town for supplies. One evening after dinner, Abigail broached the topic with Sam as they cleared away dishes together. "We might need to think about how we can make ends meet until spring," she said hesitantly. "I know things are tight," Sam replied thoughtfully as he stacked plates neatly in a pile. "But we'll figure something out." He paused for a moment before suggesting an idea. "What if we start selling some fresh vegetables from my garden? Even in winter, we could sell dried herbs or whatever else I've got left." "That's a great idea," Abigail exclaimed with renewed hope. Together, they began brainstorming other ways to generate income, mending clothes for neighbors, or even setting up a small market stall when weather permitted. In those moments of shared problem-solving and determination, Abigail felt her fears lighten just a bit more. They were not alone in facing these challenges. United by love and teamwork, they were finding ways to thrive against adversity. Through harsh weather and financial struggles, Abigail, Sam, and the boys learned invaluable lessons about resilience and support as each challenge became an opportunity for growth and connection within their newfound family unit on that vast prairie landscape. As the cold grip of winter continued to tighten around the prairie, Abigail, Sam, and the boys found themselves not just relying on their own strength but also receiving unexpected support from their surrounding community. The isolation of their remote line shack lessened as neighbors began to show kindness, reminding them that even in tough times they were not alone. One bright morning, after a particularly chilly week, a knock echoed through the shack. Abigail opened the door to find Mrs. Thompson, an older woman from a nearby homestead, standing there bundled up in a thick coat with a basket in her arms. "Good morning, Abigail," Mrs. Thompson greeted with a warm smile. "I brought you some bread and jam I made last night. I thought you might appreciate it during this cold spell." "Oh, thank you so much," Abigail replied, genuinely touched by the gesture. "You didn't have to go through all that trouble." "Nonsense. We need to look out for each other out here," Mrs. Thompson insisted. "Life on the prairie can be tough, and we're all in this together." As they chatted at the door, Sam joined them, his expression brightening at the sight of the warm bread. "Well, isn't that kind of you?" he said with appreciation. "You always know how to lift our spirits." Mrs. Thompson chuckled lightly. "Just doing my part. And I've got plenty more if you need anything else." With that, she made sure to talk about local events, upcoming gatherings, and casual meetups that offered chances for families to come together during difficult winter months. Inspired by Mrs. Thompson's visit, Abigail realized that they might benefit from reaching out more to their neighbors. As the weeks passed, they began attending community meetings held at the small schoolhouse in town. It was there that they met others who shared similar challenges and joys. One afternoon, Sam suggested they organize a potluck dinner at the shack and invite some families over to build connections within the community. Abigail loved the idea and set to work preparing dishes that would showcase what they had learned in their new life together. She baked savory pies using vegetables from Sam's garden and concocted sweet treats using whatever ingredients they could spare. When the evening of the potluck arrived, Abigail felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she opened her home to others for the first time since moving in. As families began arriving with food dishes and laughter spilling into their home, joy filled every corner of the line shack. During dinner, stories flowed freely around the table like warm broth on a cold night. Neighbors shared tales about past winters filled with hardship but also moments of triumph and resilience. Samuel and Thomas played games with other children while Abigail engaged in lively conversation with parents. "Your boys are quite helpful," one neighbor remarked as he watched Samuel eagerly assist in clearing dishes after dinner. "They're getting good training for life on the prairie," Sam replied with a grin as he leaned back in his chair. The evening was filled with warmth not only from the food but from connections being forged between hearts. Laughter echoed against wooden walls as friendships blossomed over platters of homemade food and shared experiences. Afterward, as guests departed with satisfied smiles and promises to return soon, Abigail felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over her. Their community had embraced them wholeheartedly. It reminded her that kindness existed even amid struggles. In time, they learned how to support one another during seasons of hardship, helping each other fix fences or tend to gardens when needed, sharing supplies when stocks were low, or simply offering companionship during lonely nights filled with uncertainty. Through these acts of generosity and friendship from those around them, the Thompsons, other families in town, they discovered how crucial community ties were during tough times. Together, they fostered resilience that would help them weather any storm while nurturing bonds that turned strangers into family amidst the vast expanse of prairie lands. As the harsh winter began to fade, the promise of spring bloomed across the prairie. The landscape transformed, with patches of green peeking through the melting snow and sprouting buds ready to burst into vibrant flowers. Abigail, Sam, and the boys stood together at the threshold of their lined shack, feeling a renewed sense of hope and possibility as they looked out over the land that had become their home. The past months had been filled with trials, but they had faced each challenge with unwavering support for one another. Together, they had learned the value of community and the strength that came from unity. The laughter shared during long evenings and the warmth of shared meals had woven their lives together in a way that felt unbreakable. "Just look at everything starting to wake up," Abigail said softly, her voice filled with wonder as she took in the sight before them. "It feels like a fresh start." Sam nodded, his eyes sparkling with optimism. "With every new season comes new opportunities," he replied. "We've made it this far, and we can face whatever comes next." Samuel and Thomas exchanged excited glances, their youthful spirits ignited by the thought of warmer days ahead. "Can we plant a garden?" Samuel asked eagerly. "I want to grow vegetables just like yours, Sam." "Absolutely. We can start preparing the soil right away," Sam agreed enthusiastically. "And I bet your mom will love having fresh veggies for dinner." Thomas bounced on his toes, his eyes wide with anticipation. "Can we plant flowers too? I want to make our home pretty." Abigail chuckled at her son's enthusiasm, her heart swelling with pride and joy. "Of course. We'll make this place bloom," she replied with determination. As they discussed their gardening plans, Abigail felt a sense of belonging wash over her. They were no longer just surviving day by day. They were thriving together as a family unit filled with love and laughter. The hardships they had faced only served to strengthen their bond, teaching them resilience and instilling in them a deep appreciation for one another. Over the coming weeks, Abigail set about preparing for their garden, while Samuel and Thomas helped clear away debris from the shack's yard. The boys' laughter rang out as they played while working alongside Sam, who taught them how to care for plants properly. Each day brought new adventures as they dug into the earth together. The warmth of spring not only melted away the snow but also ushered in more community gatherings. Families from neighboring homesteads began visiting more often, sharing stories over coffee or lending a hand when needed. The bonds formed in winter continued to flourish now that warmer weather allowed for more outdoor activities. One sunny afternoon, Mrs. Thompson came over again, bringing seeds she had saved from her own garden. "I thought you might like these," she said cheerfully as she handed them to Abigail. "They always remind me of bright summer days." "Thank you so much," Abigail said gratefully, appreciating how kindness continued to circle back around within their community. As the sun set on another beautiful day, Abigail gathered everyone around the table for dinner, this time featuring fresh greens from their newly planted garden. The aroma wafted through the air as laughter filled each nook of their home. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Sam remarked during dinner, looking around at their smiling faces illuminated by candlelight. Abigail nodded thoughtfully. "From lonely beginnings to this, together we've created something special." Her gaze turned to her boys who were animatedly discussing their plans for tomorrow's work in the garden. With hope shimmering bright on the horizon, Abigail knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, especially those that life may throw at them, they would face them as a family united by love and kindness. Looking ahead into their future together, they felt ready for any storm or challenge that might come their way, a patchwork family stitched together not just by necessity but by shared dreams and unwavering support amidst life's uncertainties on that vast prairie land.